Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy and I am your host for this podcast. I don't know that I consider myself a host, but anyway, just finding something in my brain to say to introduce the episode, because today I want to kind of go off of what we spoke about last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, we dived into why the new year isn't a race and why the most important thing we can do is figure out what the non-negotiables are in our life that we are not going to change. That might be work, it might be school runs, it might be caring responsibilities, and just figuring out the space around that as the space to think about where we might be able to maybe slow down, be more intentional, simplify our life, things like that. So that was last week's episode. I definitely recommend you go back there. What I did basically that episode was sort of created off the back of the fact that I did a poll on my Instagram asking people what their biggest challenge was when it came to slowing down, and 90% of people said that it was either that they didn't have enough time or they felt guilty about slowing down. And I just thought, like I said in last week's episode, I don't know what I expected when I asked the question. I just threw it up. But actually, I was then really shocked, kind of firstly how many people answered and how sort of heavily weighted it was towards, that people think they don't have enough time to slow down, and also that just the idea of slowing down and resting makes them feel guilty. I find it really sad that that's where we are. I mean, I completely understand it because I was there as well, but it's just sad seeing it reflected back that people think that if they're resting, they're lazy. I see it all the time on social media. Like if, somebody has a day at home, they'll say, having a lazy day. And it's like, it's not lazy to rest. Rest is absolutely essential. You don't go to bed at night and say, oh God, I'm being so lazy, do you? No, you're not being lazy. You have to sleep. It's, a natural part of the human cycle. If you don't sleep, you're not well. And so, off the back of that, I thought, I thought about how I shifted my mindset around slow and simple living. And I thought, it's clear that so many people feel that they are too busy and that they cannot rest because they have a load of guilt and shame attached to that. And so that's where last week's episode came from. This week's episode, we are talking about rest as resistance. So we're going to dive into rest, and we're going to dive into why we shouldn't feel guilty about resting. And we're going to do some mindset shifting. So stick with me, because there was also a time ago, where I also was spiraling in the chaos of hustle culture. Now, you might have listened to my episode at the very end of last year. It was my very, very, very last episode of 2024. And it was about why my experience in multi-level marketing shifted me into living a slower lifestyle. And so, that's where it began for me, because I remember back in those days, a particular story, which is what actually made me leave my multi-level marketing company. And listen, multi-level marketing is a whole host of SHIT, let's say. So, it's I'm never going to do it justice the way I feel about it in a few quick sentences. But what really brought it home to me with multi-level marketing, that it was just a completely toxic environment for many reasons, was I just had my first child. And it took me a couple of years to conceive my first child. And so, I was obviously, as with any child, it took me one try to conceive my son. So they're not comparable, but just as grateful. But I had waited a long time to be a mum. And I remember thinking, or I remember seeing, lots of people finding success, or so they said, finding success, while they had very small children. And, having had a small child for a couple of weeks at this point, I was thinking, I don't know how you do it. And so I asked a question. There was a Q&A thing on one of our group chats. And so I asked a question about, how do you get stuff done? How do you get your work stuff done when you have a newborn? And one of the leaders in our MLM said to me, or in our team in our MLM, said to me, you just need to hand your baby off to your husband and get the work done. And I thought, well, that's not the answer, is it? Because I've just had a baby and you're telling me that the thing I need to do when my child isn't even a month old is actually just give her to my husband, miss her childhood, chasing and hustling for a dream that is only going to happen for, 99.6% of people either don't earn any money or actually lose money. So hustling for a dream that only 0.4% of people will ever achieve. No. And so, I was embedded in hustle culture. So I have been there. And it was that conversation where it hit me really that I was just done. I was exhausted. I was physically, mentally and emotionally done. And I had been for a while, but instead of giving myself permission to rest, I just pushed through all the time and I ignored all the signs of the MLM, of my body, just telling me to slow down and take a break and rest. Because certainly in hustle culture and certainly in the culture of multi-level marketing, rest is not very valued, let's say. So there are ranks in multi-level marketing companies. The top rank in the multi-level marketing company I was in was an ambassador. And there was this common phrase that went around where I'll sleep when I'm an ambassador, implying that, rest until then, until you hit that goal is, a luxury. And rest is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And it's from there, but it's in our culture of working and hustling as well. It's just the same that when we rest, even for a short while, it feels like failure. That's why I think it was 39% of people on my poll answered that when the idea of rest makes them feel guilty. And it's this idea that we can't afford to be still, that we need to keep hustling, that we need to do more, that we need to be productive at all costs. And that guilt is a gnawing feeling that just gnaws away at us, that we aren't doing enough. And the truth is we need rest, but we resist it. And so we end up not only feeling guilty, but then when we do take a break, we view it as a sign of weakness and that we're not measuring up to the expectations that we set for ourselves. But here is something I want you to think about. Choosing rest in today's fast-paced and productivity-obsessed world isn't just about taking care of yourself anymore. It's a revolutionary act. It is an act of defiance against a culture that says you must constantly hustle to be worthy. It is saying no to the lie that your value is tied to your to-do list. Rest in a world that demands that you are constantly doing more is a really bold statement. I don't need to do more to be enough. And when we choose to rest, we're not being lazy. We're choosing to honour what our limits are. And we are resisting the pressure to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until we break and until we burn out. And it happens and it goes in cycles. And you can probably look back in your own life and see that you try and live your life in this mode and eventually you crash and burn. And it happens time and time again. And when we start believing that our worth isn't measured by how much we do, we start to see that there's a lot of courage in slowing down in a world that is absolutely adamant that we speed up. Because let's be honest, in today's world, the message of hustling is everywhere. Do more, be more. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with reminders that productivity is the absolute key to success. Social media, it just floods us with pictures of perfectly curated lives. There's people who are showcasing that they seemingly have it all together. People constantly on the move, crossing off their to-do list, checking off goals. There's motivational quotes, stupid ones such as like rise and grind, or you can sleep when you're dead, which is kind of akin to the I'll sleep when I'm an ambassador one in multi-level marketing. They're just urging us to push harder, work longer, and aim for the next achievement. But let me ask you this: what is the cost? Because what has happened is we have now internalized this idea that if we're not doing something all the time, then we're falling behind or we're being lazy. And none of us want people to think we're being lazy, do we? You don't want people to think you're lazy. And it's almost like pegged to this idea that if we're resting or we slow down, that, oh, they're being lazy. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how we've internalized this. Because I think we just constantly get in this message where we're told that success only happens from relentless effort, and that if we're not busy, we're not valuable. And if we hustle more, the more we are able to define our worth by the amount of work we can accomplish, and ultimately the less space we leave for rest or being present. Now, I want to talk about this because I want to go back to that point that we're only successful if we do something with relentless effort and being busy. And it's so untrue, because I have built my entire slow and simple living business in the opposite way. From the get-go, I couldn't not, right? I can't talk and preach about slow and simple living and then do the opposite. And so I started the whole business idea with starting it with the idea that I would have to do it differently. I couldn't use the same old dead in the water hustle culture ways of building a business. I had to do it differently. And so success doesn't only come from relentless effort and being busy all the time. Our busyness and productivity are not linked to anything, because you can absolutely be busy doing not a whole lot. So you can find success, and just using a business as an example, you can find success without relentless hustling. It does exist. The world will tell you it doesn't, but it exists. But this mindset is just so deeply ingrained in us that the thought of slowing down feels like a luxury or a privilege only available to those who have the time. Another thing, 51% of people on the poll on Instagram answered that they can't slow down because they don't have time. We're just so conditioned to believe that rest is something we have to earn and not something that is essential to our well-being. We think that we need to deserve rest by running ourselves into the ground first, but it's not the case. And rest, more and more, rest is becoming a rebellion. It is just this act of defiance against this system that's telling us constantly in a barrage that we are not enough unless we are constantly achieving, pushing and doing. So let me remind you, because choosing to rest, it's not lazy. It is actually saying no to this culture that only values us for what we do. When we rest, when we are being quote unquote unproductive, as this whole system would have us believe, It proves to us that we don't have to hustle to be worthy of peace or rest or relaxation or quiet. So yeah, that's why I titled this episode Rest as a Resistance, because it's this really quiet but powerful act of refusing to conform to this pressure of constant productivity. So before we go on, let me remind you of something so important. So turn your earbuds up. Let's go. When we rest, we are not being lazy or unproductive. We are protecting our mental health, we are protecting our physical health, and we are protecting our emotional health. We are absolutely going against this harmful narrative that exists in our society that tells us we can only be successful if we're running at full speed all the time. So, rest is not lazy and it's not unproductive. It is us showing up for ourselves and just honouring the fact that we deserve care, we deserve rest, we deserve balance, we deserve time to replenish ourselves. We are not just here to work more and hustle more. It's not happening. It's not happening. Okay, I mentioned in the episode about my slow business, and I want to introduce you guys to my slow business bundle. So if you're ready to slow down your business and build it with a lot more intentionality than before, and definitely without the overwhelm, then I want to share with you the slow business bundle. It is 30 guides, PDFs, checklists, everything you need, a massive collection of resources to help you simplify your business, align them with your values, and make progress at a pace that feels right for you. And also, this is the perfect guide if you're just getting started. Honestly, it is really difficult when you first start out a business and you've got an idea and you just seemingly need to invest in every which way and you are not even making money yet. So I kept the Slow Business Bundle super affordable. These 30 guides, PDFs, ebooks, checklists, you name it, is just $12.99, and that price is not going to change. So you will be able to find tips, tools, guidance. This whole bundle is going to support you in creating a business that is both slow, simple, fulfilling, and sustainable. So if you're tired of hustle culture and you just want to run your business on your own terms, let's get the Slow Business Bundle into your hands. You can download it at theslowlivingcollective.com/slowbusinessbundle. That is theslowlivingcollective.com/slowbusinessbundle. Okay, back to the episode. This world glorifies hustle. It glorifies productivity. It wants us in constant motion, and it tells us that rest is lazy. And like I said, rest isn't lazy. It is revolutionary because it absolutely now goes against the grain of what is considered normal. And every time you choose rest over the pull of the never-ending to-do list, you are, part of this revolution, rejecting this societal pressure that we have on us that tells us that we always have to be doing, we always have to be productive. Sometimes it's okay to do nothing. You're resisting this whole narrative, and that your value is tied to your output it's massive. The more people that do this, it creates almost like a little mini revolution, because it embraces this powerful truth that we are enough just as we are, even when we're resting. Because, like I've said, in this world, in this fast-paced world, we're constantly told that the key to our success is in how much we can achieve. How many tasks can we check off our to-do list? How quickly can we move to our next goal? Why don't we question it? Why don't we question it? Instead of racing to the next thing, what if we just pause and recognise that rest itself is unfortunately a radical choice? What I love about it, though, is those that are starting to see that. It's almost like we're saying, I'm not going to let this world, this fast-paced world, the noise around hustle culture dictate how I live anymore. I will not let it affect my life. And rest is a resistance because it forces us to break free from the expectations of society. And it's about saying no to this whole myth that our productivity determines our worth. And instead, saying yes to the idea that we're valuable whatever we are doing, whether we are working, playing, resting, sleeping, whatever. So when you slow down, take a step back, give yourself permission to rest, that is where you are choosing intentional living over mindless doing or living by default. It is where you resist that pressure to hustle and instead do your best to embrace balance and understanding that this life isn't about what we accomplish, but the smaller moments. And when we rest, we hear ourselves better and we reconnect with ourselves. And we can largely avoid burnout. And I think I don't know where it all went so wrong, to be honest. I think I could say it 1,000 times that rest is, it is not a luxury. But let me dive into why rest isn't a luxury and why we're not being lazy when we rest. Because it is such an important part of both our mental and our physical health. So as much as, I'm happy to sit here and be like, yeah, rest is a resistance against a productivity obsessed world, it is also super essential for maintaining our mental and physical health. So it goes far beyond just recharging our batteries. So it helps our mental clarity, it reduces our stress levels, it encourages our creativity, it improves our focus. And so we're caught up in this society that equates hustle with success. And we actually have forgotten, or it's been pushed out of us, that our true productivity and sustainable success doesn't come from relentlessly grinding and hustling. Instead, it comes from the moments where we're able to pause, step back, reevaluate, and just allow ourselves to be. Because it's when we kind of neglect resting that we just deplete ourselves physically, mentally. It leads to burnout, we're exhausted. But on the flip side, when we embrace rest, we're actually better able to show up fully. So, it seems like it's a massive contradiction. Maybe society itself hasn't worked it out yet. But, it's a massive contradiction that society expects us to hustle, when actually the true productivity lies in embracing the rest. It's mad to me. It's mad. Completely mad. Okay. How do we create this space for rest in a busy world? We know that actually rest is important, but we feel guilty for it. So where do we start? How do we start creating space? And how do we start resting without the guilt? Because, while 39% of people on my poll said they felt guilty about resting, 51% also said that they're too busy as well. So life is busy. I get it. I do get it. Life is very busy. My life is busy. Your life is busy. All of our lives are busy. And we have all these never-ending things going on. We have those non-negotiables. We have to-do lists. We've got work demands, family, and everything in between. And sometimes that makes it feel impossible to slow down. And it is really easy to fall into trap that rest is something that has to be earned. And it has to be grand, and it's a spa day rather than actually just sitting for a moment, or it's something that has to take hours or days. But so I'm here to tell you the good news that it actually rest doesn't mean you have to do nothing, but it is about intentionally carving out time for yourself and setting boundaries that protect your peace, even in a chaotic world. So it's not about quitting or dropping everything. It's just about reclaiming these really small moments of stillness amidst all this hustle that is around us. So we're going to think about how we set aside time for rest, because we're not just sort of taking a break from life. We're just ensuring that we have the energy and focus to keep showing up for life in the ways that matter most. So here are some things you can start thinking about to help you incorporate rest into your life. And I want you to try and do it without guilt. You don't need to earn it. It is essential. So number 1, setting boundaries. And we hear about this a lot. We hear about setting boundaries a lot, but I don't know if any of us actually are very good at setting boundaries. But just a reminder that it's okay to say no. So that might be turning down anything. Or it might be stepping away from your phone for a while to protect your time and energy. It might just be a few minutes of quiet. Just a boundary around something. And that is a necessary part of creating space for rest. So it might be that, you've got a super busy week and you're going to set aside some time for rest, and somebody says, oh, can you do this for me in that time? It's okay to say no. It is okay to say no. And number 2 is to start creating rituals around your rest. Now, don't panic. This isn't adding something to your plate. You don't have to schedule an entire afternoon of rest to feel restored. But again, it's about these small intentional things that you can incorporate throughout your day. So it could be something as simple as, taking a few moments while you drink your morning tea or coffee, and do so without scrolling on your phone. Or it might be taking a walk on your lunch break to clear your mind, or instead of just sitting and scrolling on your phone during that time. Or maybe it's setting some time aside in the evening. So it's going to be whatever works for you, but these rituals are going to be what become your anchor for rest. These little tiny pockets of peace that ground you in the midst of your busy life. And so number 3 is embracing stillness, because so often we get this idea, I guess, a misconception that, especially I would say as mothers actually, that we are going to need a spa day, and that we're going to need, to take a full day away from life. But actually, sometimes rest can just be as simple as 5 minutes of stillness. So if you're one of the people that's like, I feel guilty for resting, let this be a reminder to you that it can just be 5 minutes of stillness, just being in the moment without pressure to do anything. So you can just close your eyes, take a deep breath, let the world keep on doing its thing and spinning while you take your 5 minutes. Because actually stillness can be really restorative, even when it's just a small, simple pause in your day. And I think ultimately what all of this shows is that rest doesn't have to be this big, grand spa day kind of event. You don't need to wait for the weekend or a holiday to rest. It is, again, about just weaving these small moments into your daily life so that you can recharge and resist the constant push to do more. And, this is your rebellion against hustle culture. And these small pockets of rest will just help you show up more fully in, I think, almost every area of your life. So I would love to hear from you. Go over to Substack, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Find this post for this podcast episode and leave me a comment about what you intend to try. Because I'm really, really interested to hear, how are you going to start weaving it into your everyday life? And I just hope that throughout this episode, it showed you that in a world that is constantly busy and telling us to be busy, do more, prove our worth, be more productive, when we choose rest, somehow it has become this wild act of defiance. It's like a rebellion against a culture that values this non-stop hustle and constant doing. But it is also the reminder that we don't have to prove our worth through perpetual motion. So this year, I'm challenging myself and you, if you'd like to join me, to just resist the urge to hustle all the time. Let's give ourselves the space to rest and recover when necessary, to recharge ourselves so that we can show up fully in every area of our life. So the goal isn't to do it all. It is to live with intention and focus on what truly matters. And so as we move through this year, let's make rest a priority and not an afterthought. So if you're ready to join me on that, let's embrace the power of rest and start living this more intentional life. So I have my brand new Slow and Simple workshop, and I would love to invite you to join me. It's really quick. It's not going to take up too much of your time. It is not something extra to add to your plate. It's a quick 40-minute workshop designed to help you go from busy to slow and intentional. And in the workshop, we're going to explore how to start incorporating these small, simple changes that prioritize slowness, rest, reflection, and alignment. And I really think it is the perfect starting point for anyone feeling burnt out or overwhelmed by the pressure of today's fast-paced world. I think it is a great entry point for slow and simple living, because I think we have become so misaligned with ourselves that we just need a spot to work our way back. And I really can't wait to help you in this workshop. I had a lot of fun putting it together. It's really simple. It's really just, designed not to take up a lot of your time. You're not going to have to, commit to something day in, day out. It's just a quick 40-minute workshop, and it is going to help you get started on this journey. So I would love to see you there. To join, all you need to do is go to theslowlivingcollective.com/slow workshop. That's theslowlivingcollective.com/slow workshop. And then just sign up, and you immediately get access to the video workshop and the materials that go with it. So I'm super excited to welcome you to that. And I just want to remind you that I know it's difficult. I know that we have been forced this idea to feel guilty about resting, and I just want to remind you that it is not an afterthought, and it is an absolutely essential part of our well-being. And if we don't have to prove our worth, we don't have to prove that we have earned our rest. We just need to find small ways to weave it into our day. And I just hope this episode has helped you sort of reframe that a little bit. You can obviously head over to my Substack, and there's a post there that will go into detail as well, give you some actionable tips about how to start integrating it into your life. But also obviously the Slow and Simple workshop will really help as well. So thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I am so grateful to have you here, and I hope it has just helped you think about rest in a different way and see where a lot of this guilt comes from is completely outside of ourselves. It comes from a society that pushes this idea that our value is tied to our productivity, and when we rest we're being lazy and we haven't earned it, and it's just not true. And so if you can find some small ways to integrate rest into your life, and like I said, it's not about taking an 8-hour sleep, although that of course is important and an essential part of your day, and it's not about going to the spa or taking a nap. We can weave these things in, and I think this is what it comes back to in most of what I share about slow and simple living, is that so often people think of it as something really unattainable because they have busy lives, or because they feel this way or that way about something in their life, like feeling guilty over rest. And it is just about finding those small parts of our day around our non-negotiables where we can start actually being more intentional, slowing down, and start creating these little small intentional steps that will help us build a life that is more mindful, more meaningful, slower, simpler, more intentional, and the kind of life we want to live. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much again for listening. Come find me over on Substack. That's theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Come find me on Instagram @theslowlivingcollective. And until next time, I will catch you in my next episode.